Hey everyone. Today I just wanted to discuss something that's really important to me personally, and also something that would greatly benefit the party, our cause, um, the whole identity of the party itself, really. In my last video about the Democratic Party, I discussed how the party's focus went from the average worker, the average American, to the more urban, technocratic stuff. In this video, I want to discuss one of the solutions to that. This is one of the unpopular things I was talking about, which is to just s- stop demonizing the Southern Cross, or it's better known in other areas as the rebel flag or the Confederate battle flag. Stop demonizing it. If you want to win over voters in the South, stop demonizing it. You know? I wrote a paper on this. I might link it below, I might not, I don't know. But in it, I basically say that the rebel flag has been cast out. It's been just shoved away from the Democratic arena. Um, and that's turned off a lot of voters in the South, and it's turned off a lot of voters that would more often than not vote Democrat, because there is such a thing as an ancestral Democrat. There's people that vote Democrat consistently because it's what their parents voted for, it's what their grandparents voted for, and such and such. Um, and we just need to stop rejecting cultural symbols, because that's what it is. The Southern banner, the Southern Cross, it is a cultural symbol of the South. It is. This is something I've studied passionately. It's something I'm very passionate about. Um, and to go over a brief history of it, the Southern Cross is linked to the Confederacy. It was created during that time. It was first properly designed in 1862 and became the basis for multiple um, multiple like armies and regiments and such in the Southern Army. Excuse me. And it became very prominent that it was eventually incorporated into the national flag of the Confederacy. But and that in turn caused the Southern Cross to become synonymous with the South. And not many people know this, but during Reconstruction, it wasn't super prominent among the general public, because obviously we had better things to worry about back then, such as surviving. Um, it was mostly seen at like military events with the um, United Confederate Veterans or the um, United Daughters of the Confederacy, which hosted military events and reunions and such. And it wasn't really until the turn of the century in like 1900 through like 1930 that it started to see more of a resurgence with the or just a growth in popularity with the average Southerner. And we saw that by the 1940s, where we saw it in places like Okinawa or Europe and such. Saw it all across every front that the U.S. Army went to, and by that point, by the late 40s and then the 50s, it had become a symbol of the just the American South, the Southern people. Essentially, the Southern people adopted it. We adopted it as our symbol because it is rooted in the South. We didn't really have any other symbols because Southerners, despite what some people will say, it's generally agreed that Southerners, like white Southerners in the American South, just Southerners in general, they are a distinct culture within the United States. Um, And cultures usually adopt symbols to represent them, and that's what we did. That's what Southerners did. We had a our attempt at independence with less than savory reasons, but that attempt still resonated with the Southerners, and we adopted the main symbol, the most prominent symbol of that attempt, as our symbol for cultural identity and such. Um, where this really started to turn bad was by the 60s, um, which aligned with both the Civil War centennial and the Civil Rights Movement. In the 60s, politicians seeking to get power exploited the fears of poor whites, um, and they hijacked the rebel flag for that purpose to kind of um, identify or, like make it seem like they're one of the people. And we just we just kind of let them get away with that. There were attempts to stop that, to try to reverse that. The uh, there was the Young Patriot organization in uptown Chicago, which was comprised of white Southerners from Appalachia, who faced discrimination and violence in uptown Chicago. They utilized the rebel flag as their symbol, and they were aligned with the Black Panthers. In fact, that's what this pin right here is, and this is the Rainbow Coalition pin, which they was part of. Um, they uh, they flew the rebel flag because it was their cultural marker. Another one is the Southern Students Organizing Committee. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. They flew the rebel flag as well. They had it on all their pins and stuff. I'll provide some examples of both of these, and it was somewhat successful. By the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, the rebel flag had become less of a potent symbol of division and more of just a back to, for the most part, at least in the South, being a symbol of the Southern people, the Southern culture. We had like prominent artists in like music and such, who flew the rebel flag. We had like bands like Leonard Skinner or Pantera. They flew the rebel flag, and it was generally viewed as just a cultural symbol of the American South with a stained history. And then by the late 2000s and then the 2010s, some bad actors such as the Ku Klux Klan and a um, certain someone in fucking South Carolina who I will not name because I don't want to give that piece of shit recognition. Um, they essentially tarnished the rebel flag's reputation among the general public, and this coincided with a time of just censorship and iconoclasm and such, like tearing down the statues instead of repurposing them for educational means. That's a whole different video I can get into. Um, and it's just we need to stop stigmatizing it. We need to stop. Sure, we can look at the history of it. We can acknowledge that the history that has some pretty bad history behind it. But so does that. That has some pretty bad history behind it. The Stars and Stripes. Um, but just because there's stains on that history doesn't mean it should be abandoned. Now, some people are going to say, "Oh, what about the Nazi flag?" That's not a comparable thing. The rebel flag is distinctly different than ideological flags like the flag of the National Socialist German Workers' Party. It's distinctly different because the rebel flag is a military flag, which was then adopted into a cultural marker. You can't compare apples to oranges. That's what the situation is. That's what the argument is. It's apples to oranges. We as a party, the Democratic Party, we need to win back the South. We need a new Southern strategy. In order to do this, we need to stop stigmatizing the flag of the South. We need to stop stigmatizing the culture of the South, because the culture of the South is it's viewed as backwards or just racist or such and such when it's not. Nobody really understands what the Southern culture is. There's a lot of subcultures from the South. Um, Nobody really understands what the South is truly. They rely on stereotypes in the media and such, which often portray it in a bad light. So they just assume that Southern culture is just this overtly racist, discriminatory, bigoted culture when it's not. I've lived in Southern culture my whole life. It's not. If we want to win back the South, if we want to secure the party's position in the future, we need to stop stigmatizing a symbol because of bad actors and instead look at what the symbol really means to the people. And more often than not, what it means is, um, at least to Southerners, is a symbol of anti-authoritarianism, like resisting um, centralized government, overreach government, cultural unity, the union of the Southern states and Southern peoples, and it's just a symbol of resistance to the Southern people. Southern people have historically been defiant. They've historically been less keen to go along with what the government says. The vast majority of people who fly the rebel flag here in the South, they aren't the same type of people that voted to secede over slavery and such in 1861. Those people were the politicians, the rich men, the aristocrats of the South, while the majority of people who fly the Southern Cross now are poor. They live and pay in the paycheck. They don't have the high life. So it's been pretty fairly taken from its um, creators. It's it's a symbol of the poor Southerner, um, the white Southerner, the black Southerner. It's for the Southern man and woman. It's for every Southerner in this nation, and we need to stop ceding ground to the right whenever something's controversial. We need to stop ceding ground to this because that's how they win. They win through bringing in the outcasts of our party. That's how they won in 2024. That's how they won in 2022. That's how they won in 2021. They brought in the outcasts from the Democratic Party. We need to stop doing this. We need to stop excluding people based on these petty differences. We need to stop excluding people because of the flag they fly. We need to stop excluding people because we don't like the history behind a certain cultural emblem. Um, the Democratic Party is a party for all Americans. It's a party for the poor American. It's a party for the working American, and it's it just frustrates me how so many, the vast majority of people within the party just despise Southern culture, despise the Southern people, and despise any bit of symbolism that Southern people create. It needs to change. We need to bring in these people. We need to bring in the poor Southerner, the white Southerner, the black Southerner. We need to stop ceding ground. We need to stand our ground. We need to plant our flag. We need to fight back. Any attempt to take away our cultural symbol here in the South should be met with defiance. It should not, we should not be ceding our culture over to the right, because that's not what our culture is. Our culture is that of resistance to tyranny, resistance to overreach, community, and just it's one of the greatest cultures here in this nation. Few places in this nation can boast about their history like the South can. Anyway, this video has been going on for long enough. I just want to talk about that, and I hope this was a good listen. I hope you enjoyed this video. That's about it. See ya.